It's been a whirlwind of conversations lately, and the kind of chatter you don't just scroll past. News started popping up across forums and in conversations among shooters and collectors. Glock has stopped sending their COA models to the civilian market. Not next month, not after the next shipment, but right now. That kind of sudden change gets people talking, and for good reason. When a model series earns its place as both a professional tool and a coveted item for private owners, cutting it off sends ripples through every part of the market. For those who haven't seen one up close, the COA line is a collaboration between Glock and Aimpoint, pairing the familiar Glock frame with an Aimpoint ACRO P-2 style optic mounted right from the factory. The idea was to take a platform that's already known for reliability and equip it with an optic system built for duty conditions, rugged, sealed, and resistant to the elements. These aren't just dressed-up range toys. They're out-of-the-box solutions for law enforcement, military, and serious civilian users who want something they can carry into almost any environment and trust to work. The lineup covered models many people already know and love: the compact G19, the duty-sized G45 and G47, and even slimline choices like the G43X and G48. Each one offered that same integration with the ACRO optic, meaning you could get a pistol and sight combination tuned to work together, without having to buy and mount separately. That made them a standout choice for anyone wanting to skip the custom shop wait times and uncertainty about fit or alignment. And then, just as quickly as the COA had worked its way into people's wish lists, the flow to civilian shelves stopped. The word came down to distributors that no more COA units would be shipped for civilian sales until military and law enforcement orders were filled. It wasn't framed as, once we get through the backlog, we'll start again. The message was blunt. The pipeline is closed to the civilian side for now. That hit the community like a flashbang. Retailers fielded questions, customers scrambled to lock in whatever was left in stock, and some folks walked into their local gun shops and bought up the last few units on the spot. Reports started circulating of buyers grabbing two at once, paying just under $1,000 each, knowing full well they might not see another one on the shelf for a long time. Alongside the rush to buy, there was a rising worry that even confirmed orders might get canceled. A few people voiced concern that certain shops could hold on to incoming stock and relist it at a higher price once scarcity set in. Others said they were watching tracking numbers like hawks, hoping their packages would ship before any changes hit. That combination of urgency and suspicion is something the gun market has seen before, especially whenever there's a sudden halt in production or distribution. On the discussion boards, the tone ranged from resigned acceptance to full-on frustration. Some pointed out that prioritizing large contracts over small-scale civilian sales makes business sense, especially if the orders are from government clients who expect delivery on a strict timeline. Others countered that the COA line had built up a loyal civilian following, and cutting them off entirely instead of scaling back felt like a slap in the face. The divide wasn't just about who gets the pistols. It was about what that decision says about where civilians rank in the company's priorities. For now, the only certainty is that COA models in civilian hands have just become a lot rarer. People who already own one are looking at their pistols a little differently, some even reconsidering whether they want to keep using them heavily or tuck them away for safekeeping. And those who were still on the fence a week ago are now facing the reality that their window to buy has slammed shut, at least for the time being. These pistols aren't just sitting in a warehouse. They're being rerouted to fill commitments that were either already signed or have come together very recently. Big contracts from military or law enforcement agencies don't just show up out of thin air. They're usually the result of months of testing, negotiations, and budget approvals. When one finally lands, it's often on a strict delivery schedule, and missing deadlines can have real consequences. Some of the speculation in the shooting community has focused on whether these orders are going to U.S. military branches, like the Air Force or Army, or whether the demand is coming from overseas. A few voices online suggested it could be a mix, with foreign police or defense forces taking a significant share. Others pointed to the possibility that certain agencies that had previously adopted other platforms, like the SIG P-320, are now making a switch. That's not a stretch. In recent years, some law enforcement groups and even military units have reconsidered earlier choices due to reported safety concerns or changing operational needs. If that's what's happening here, the scale of the shift could easily explain a gap of many months, or even a couple of years, Before the civilian market sees COA models again, contracts of that size soak up production capacity in a way that simply turning on another assembly line can't solve overnight. Every pistol needs to meet the same standards. Every optic has to be properly mounted and tested, and every shipment has to clear whatever logistical steps the client requires. Then there's the supply chain side of the story, which makes the whole thing even more complex. Glock does have a significant manufacturing presence in Georgia, producing frames, barrels, and slides for the U.S. market. But that doesn't mean every single part is American-made. Quite a few of the internal components are still sourced from Austria. And while the company can synthesize its own polymer for frames, the raw chemicals have to be on hand in the right quantities. Steel is another key factor, and Glock is known for using Austrian steel, something they take pride in and are unlikely to swap out without a compelling reason. These imported materials and parts mean that, even for pistols assembled in the United States, international trade policies can hit the final price and availability. Tariffs on steel, aluminum, and other metals have been in place for years, and the European Union's 50% tariff on certain firearm parts has been a particular pinch point. That's before you even get to the normal ups and downs of raw material costs, shipping delays, and the ripple effects of global events. Price changes have already been showing up. Glock's spare Gen 3 slides were, for example, went from around $296 to $390, and their performance triggers bumped from $99 to $110. Those numbers aren't just marketing adjustments, they're the product of higher material costs, increased shipping rates, and the simple fact that when demand outstrips supply, prices tend to rise. Some in the community see tariffs as the main culprit, others point to inflation and pandemic-era supply chain issues, and a few say it's just the normal cycle of the firearms market reacting to political and economic shifts. Whatever combination of factors you choose to emphasize, the end result is the same for the person trying to buy a COA pistol today. Fewer units are available, and the ones that are still out there cost more than they did just a short time ago. For a buyer, it's not just about finding the right model anymore, it's about finding it at a price that still feels reasonable before the next price jump hits. As the back and forth plays out online, it's clear that the shortage isn't just a single company decision in a vacuum. It's tied to broader currents in manufacturing, international trade, and government procurement. And that means the resolution, whenever it comes, will probably be just as much about those bigger forces as it is about Glock deciding to open the tap for civilian buyers again. All of this has a very real impact on the civilian market, and you can see it in the way people are talking and buying. The COA models that were once just another option in the display case are now being treated like rare collectibles. In some circles, they've already been labeled unicorns, especially the G47 and the slimmer G43X variants. These aren't just pistols anymore, they're pieces of a moment in time, tied to a sudden shift in availability that has changed the way people think about them. The secondary market reflects that shift almost immediately. Listings start creeping up in price, sometimes quietly, sometimes with a bold, no longer available new tag meant to justify the increase. People who missed the initial rush are left deciding whether to pay the premium now or gamble on waiting, hoping that supply will normalize sooner than expected. History in this space says that once scarcity takes hold, those premiums have a way of sticking around, even after availability improves. Among owners, there's a split in behavior. Some are shooting their COAs just as they always would, confident that these guns were built for hard use, and that's exactly what they'll get. Others are dialing back range time, keeping round counts low to preserve condition, thinking ahead to resale value, or simply wanting to keep something special in pristine shape. Neither approach is wrong. It's just another sign of how quickly perception changes when a product crosses from common enough into hard to find. From a personal perspective, it's hard not to see the frustration on both sides. For the buyer, it feels like the door slammed shut just as they were about to walk through it. For the company, there's the reality that meeting large-scale contracts is part of staying competitive in a world where other manufacturers are also vying for those same deals. The balance between serving institutional clients and keeping faith with the civilian market is never easy. And moments like this put that tension right in the spotlight. Looking ahead, the path back to normal availability will depend on several moving parts: the pace of military and law enforcement deliveries, the stability of the supply chain, and the company's own production priorities. If the contracts driving this shift are as large as some believe, it could be many months before even a trickle of COA units makes its way back to the civilian shelves. On the other hand, if production ramps up faster than expected, we might see limited batches reappear sooner, though probably at higher prices than before. For now, the best anyone can do is stay informed, watch the market, and make decisions based on what's important to them, whether that's locking in a deal before prices climb further or waiting in the hope of a better opportunity later. This isn't the first time a sought-after firearm has become scarce overnight, and it won't be the last. But for those who value what the COA line offers, the events of these past days have been a reminder that availability is never guaranteed, and sometimes the window to act is a lot shorter than you think.